I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, especially not by my own wife. Her name, Emily, and we'd been together for about 5 years. Things weren't perfect. Sometimes she'd roll her eyes at me, act annoyed if I asked how her day was, but I figured those were just normal couple disagreements. I was busy with work trying to build a life, and honestly I thought we were solid, until I started noticing little things. First, she'd come home later than usual from girls' nights, but when I asked, she'd shrug it off, say she was just out with her friends, maybe grabbing a drink. But I've been around long enough to know when someone's hiding something. She'd avoid eye contact, and her stories about where she'd been started to sound inconsistent. Plus, her phone became a mystery. She'd keep it glued to her hand, password protected, and sometimes she'd rush to hide it when I entered the room. Her behavior was off, but I couldn't pinpoint why. Yet, then came the night I saw her phone buzzing nonstop. I was tidying up the living room and noticed her screen lit up with a message from someone. Named Mike. Nothing unusual there, right? Except the message was just a string of flirty emojis and the name sounded familiar. I didn't recognize it at first, but I felt a strange knot forming in my stomach. I decided to peek at her phone when she went to the bathroom. Stupid move, I know, but I needed to know if my gut was just overreacting. What I saw made my blood run cold. The message was clear. Can't wait to see you tonight. I've been dreaming about what we're gonna do. It wasn't just innocent flirting, it was dirty, explicit, and plain obvious they'd been planning to meet. My heart dropped. The worst part, the last message was sent just a few hours before she came home that night. I sat there, stunned. For a split second I felt numb. Then the anger kicked in so hard I thought I'd lose it. How long had this been going on? Was it just one night, or had she been sneaking around for weeks? I couldn't believe I missed all the signs, that I'd been blind to her lies. I'd been trying so hard to make this work, to be a good husband, and she was out there screwing someone else. And not just anyone, her probation officer of all people. That added a whole new layer of betrayal. Next, I started thinking about how to confront her. Did I call her right there? Wait until morning? The thing is, I knew her well enough to know she'd deny, lie, or spin some bullshit story. So I decided to wait. I needed to catch her in the act or get concrete proof. I stayed up all night, pretending to sleep, listening for any signs of her sneaking around. When she finally came home late that night, she was drunk, stumbling, and angry when I asked her where she'd been. She'd lie, of course. Out with my friends, she slurred. But I saw her eyes flash with hostility. I knew she was hiding something, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I told her I'd found her messages. Her face twisted into something ugly, like I'd just insulted her entire existence. She spat, "It's nothing, just some stupid joke, you're overreacting." Yeah, right. That's when I realized the game was on and I'd been played, but I needed more than just her words. I needed evidence, and I needed a plan. I couldn't sleep that night, the rage and hurt swirling inside me like a tornado. How could she do this? After all we'd been through, her bitching about my job, my little flaws, me trying to be a good husband. She'd been sneaking around with the guy who'd been assigned to keep her out of trouble, her probation officer. Unbelievable. That's when I started to think about revenge. Not just catching her, but making her feel the pain she'd caused me. I wasn't the kind of guy who'd just walk away, not without a fight. I started to plan. I knew I had to be smart about it, not jump in head first. I couldn't let her find out I knew everything just yet. I needed to see if she'd slip up again, find out how deep this went. I decided I'd follow her, gather more proof, and then confront her face to face. I also knew I had to do something about her so-called probation officer. A guy named Mark, tall, clean-cut, and supposedly respectful. That's the guy she'd been texting so much. I had a sneaky suspicion that if I played my cards right, I could turn her world upside down. But right now, I was just trying to hold it together. My mind kept circling back to that feeling of betrayal, wondering how I'd been so blind, how she could look me in the eye and lie so easily. The worst part, I still loved her. That's what hurt the most. I kept telling myself I needed to stay calm, figure out my next move, but inside I was boiling. I knew one thing, I was going to find out everything, and when I did, she'd wish she'd never crossed me. The next few days were a blur of planning and trying to keep my cool. I kept my phone close, secretly tracking her movements, making mental notes of every suspicious thing she did. She continued her pattern of coming home late, and I started following her when she left the house. Turns out, she'd been meeting up with Mark, her probation officer, in some sketchy little bar downtown. I saw them more than once, sitting close, whispering, laughing like they had some secret just between them. That's when I knew for sure this wasn't some one-night stand. It was something real, something deep, and it made my stomach churn. I wasn't the kind of guy to jump to violence or blow my top without thinking. Instead, I decided I'd gather evidence, then expose her at the right moment. I needed her to see I wasn't some naive fool. I started recording their meetups, snapping pictures whenever I could. I pretended to be busy with work, but inside I was consumed with this burning need for justice. Every time I saw her sneaking out again or her texting Mark, I felt a mix of disgust and heartbreak, like I'd been punched in the gut every single time. One afternoon, I found her phone bill. Of course, she deleted most texts, but some still remained in the archive, enough to see the pattern. Hours of messaging, emojis, flirty banter, plans to meet. I saw the time stamps: noon, late at night, sometimes early morning. No doubt about it, she'd been lying all along. She told me she was working late or out with her friends, but the truth was she'd been with Mark. That realization hit me hard, and I felt a surge of anger rise. It wasn't just betrayal, it was an outright slap in the face. I knew I had to confront her, but I also wanted to hit her where it hurt most. I waited for the right moment. I needed her to be alone, vulnerable, so I arranged for her to be out for a few hours while I set up my plan. I'd found some of her receipts from that bar, showing she'd been there multiple nights. I even managed to get a key piece of evidence: a video recording from a security camera outside the bar where she and Mark met. It was blurry, but enough to clearly identify her. I was finally ready. When she came home that night, I was sitting on the couch, calm on the surface, but inside I was boiling with rage. She looked annoyed, trying to play it cool, but I didn't let her get away with it. I told her I knew everything about the messages, about the meetings. Her face twisted into anger, then defiance. "You're crazy," she spat. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just paranoid." I held up the proof, and her eyes widened, the cracks in her facade showing. Still, she kept lying, insisting it was all innocent, that she was just trying to get through her probation and that Mark was just being friendly. I could see the panic in her eyes, but I wasn't about to let her skate. I told her I wasn't going to be some cuckold. She'd crossed a line, and I was done playing the fool. I told her I had enough evidence to prove she was cheating, that I'd be making some calls the next day. Her reaction: she started crying, but not the genuine kind. It was more like a show, a way to manipulate me. She looked at me with those bitchy eyes and said, "You're overreacting. It's none of your damn business. I don't owe you an explanation." That's when I realized she'd been lying so much she didn't even care anymore. She thought she could spin her way out of it like she always did with her little excuses. I felt a mix of heartbreak and anger. I'd loved this woman once, shared everything with her, and now I was staring at her in disbelief. My mind kept racing. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face? I was ready to explode. But I kept my voice steady. I told her I was done, that I'd be confronting Mark the very next day, that I was tired of her bullshit. She looked at me, sneered, and said I was overreacting again. But deep down, I knew her mask was cracking. She was caught, and she knew it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just sat there thinking about everything that had happened: the lies, the betrayals, the way she'd so effortlessly turned her back on us. That's when I started to realize that this was more than just her cheating. It was about respect, trust, everything I thought we had. I kept telling myself that I needed to be smarter, more calculated. I'd come this far, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it without a fight. The plan was in motion now. Next step was confronting Mark, getting more evidence, and figuring out what to do about Emily. I felt a strange mixture of relief and impending rage. I'd been played, but I was also ready to turn the tables. Whatever came next, I knew I'd be ready. The morning after the confrontation, I woke up feeling like I'd been run over by a truck. My head was pounding from hours of restless sleep, and my stomach was twisted with 1,000 different emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal, and a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to act fast. I had enough evidence now, but I needed something more concrete, something that would really shake her up and make her realize I wasn't going to be pushed aside anymore. I decided my next move would be to confront Mark, her probation officer. I'd been watching him too, noting where he worked and when he was most available. I wanted to catch him off guard, maybe get a look at his phone or see if he was still texting her. I figured if I could get some direct proof from him, like a text exchange or a voicemail, it would be game over. I wasn't planning to do anything reckless. I just needed to make him understand I knew what was happening. That afternoon, I went straight to his office. I didn't want to alert anyone, so I just showed up pretending I wanted a meeting. Mark was surprised to see me, but he held his composure. I kept my tone calm but firm, asking him about Emily, about their meetings, about what kind of help he'd been providing her. He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his pen, trying to downplay everything. That's when I pulled out my phone, showing him the proof I'd gathered, photos, timestamps, even a video clip. His face changed from confident to guilty in seconds. "Look," I said, "I know what's going on. I've got the evidence. If you don't want this to escalate, I suggest you stop all contact with Emily immediately, and I mean right now, asterisk asterisk." His eyes darted around, and for a second I thought he might deny everything. But then he sighed, carefully choosing his words. "Listen, man, I don't want trouble. I didn't mean for this to get out of hand. Emily's got her issues, and I was just trying to help her stay clean. That's all." His voice sounded sincere, but I wasn't buying it. The way he looked at me, defensive, guilty, said enough. I told him I'd give him one chance to step back and leave her alone, or I'd make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person he was. He nodded slowly, promising not to contact her again. I left feeling a little bit of relief, but also more anger. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about the betrayal of trust, the lies, and the fact that this guy had been messing with my wife while I was out trying to do right by her. I realized I'd underestimated just how deep this went. The pain was still raw, but I'd taken a small step forward. That night, I sat in my living room, replaying everything. I started questioning whether I should keep fighting for the marriage or just cut my losses. I loved her once, but love doesn't mean much when it's one-sided, especially when that love is being fed lies and betrayal. I kept thinking about all the moments I gave her, all the times I was there for her, and how she'd repaid me with this affair. The worst part, I still felt like I was holding on to some hope that she'd come clean, that she'd be honest and sincere. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just a fling. This was a full-blown betrayal, and she didn't even care enough to hide it anymore. I started planning my next steps. I knew I could confront her again, demand the truth directly, but I also wondered if I should hold off, see if she'd slip up again. I was torn. Part of me wanted to tear her apart, to make her regret every second of her lies. The other part just wanted to walk away, forget about the woman I thought I knew. But I wasn't going to let her ruin me. Not without a fight. While I was lost in these thoughts, I heard her car pull up in the driveway. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly hid my phone and pretended I was busy watching TV. She came in, acting casual, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. She tried to act like nothing had happened, like she hadn't been caught. That's when I realized she thought she was untouchable. She thought she could keep lying, keep sneaking around, and I'd never find out the truth. Well, I was about to prove her wrong. The game was far from over, but I'd already started turning the tide. And I was damn sure she'd regret the day she ever crossed me. That night, I stayed awake, listening to every sound in the house, trying to gauge her mood. She kept acting normal, cooking dinner, chatting about her day, trying to act like everything was fine, but I knew better. I could see it in her eyes. She was nervous, avoiding looking at me directly, and every so often she'd cast a quick glance my way, like she was trying to gauge my mood. I felt a twisted satisfaction that she was starting to crack, but I also knew she was dangerous when cornered. I decided I couldn't just sit back anymore. I needed to confront her again, face to face, with everything on the table. I waited until she was in the bathroom, then I grabbed my phone. I recorded myself speaking, telling her I knew about her affair, that I had enough proof to end this nightmare. I kept my voice calm but firm, making sure she understood I was serious. Then I approached her as she was coming out and I handed her my phone, showing her the recording. Her face instantly paled. "What are you doing?" she snapped, trying to snatch it away. But I held her back. "Listen," I said, "you've been caught lying, cheating, sneaking around. I have evidence, so don't even try to deny it anymore." Her eyes flashed with anger, then defiance. "You're crazy, you're overreacting, this is all just some misunderstanding." I shook my head. "No, Emily, it's not. I've had enough of your bullshit. You think you can just lie and manipulate your way out? Not anymore." Her lips curled into a sneer. "You don't have anything on me. You're just jealous or paranoid or whatever. You're insecure. That's why you're trying to control everything." That was her usual defense. Blame me, dismiss everything, act like she was the victim. But I wasn't buying it. I told her the truth was out, that I'd been following her, gathering proof, and that I was done playing her game. Her reaction, she threw her hands up and started yelling. "You don't get to tell me what to do. I'm not some little girl. If you want to leave, just leave. But I'm not going down without a fight." I saw her face twist with anger and desperation. She was trying to act tough, but I knew she was scared. She knew I had her number now. That moment was a turning point. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I told her I was done trusting her, that she'd broken whatever little bond we had left. I warned her I'd be making some serious decisions soon, whether to stay and work things out or to walk away for good. I said I wanted the truth from her, no more lies. She looked at me with pure hatred and spat. "You're nothing. Just some naive guy who got played. I don't owe you anything anymore." That's when I felt the hurt hit me harder than ever. Seeing her so cold, so dismissive, was like a punch to the gut. I'd loved her once, believed in us, but now it was clear she didn't care. All her lies, all her sneaking around had shattered what little trust I had left. I stood there, staring at her, feeling the weight of everything: anger, heartbreak, betrayal. I knew I had to make a decision soon. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, not knowing if she was going to keep lying or finally come clean. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I decided I'd give her one last chance to tell the truth. Voluntarily, no more hiding. I'd sit her down, look her in the eyes, and ask her point blank what she wanted, whether she was willing to be honest and try to fix this, or if she wanted to walk away. I knew this was my final shot and I wasn't going to screw it up. But deep inside, I already knew I'd made up my mind. No matter what she said, I couldn't keep pretending anymore. What I didn't expect, though, was that she'd surprise me. That evening she sat me down with a look I'd never seen before, defiant, almost triumphant. "You want to know the truth?" she asked, voice tight. "Fine. Yes, I've been with Mark. I don't care what you think anymore. I never loved you that much. I was just bored and he was there." And she broke off, then started crying, tears streaming down her face. But even her tears felt fake, like she was just putting on a show to get her way. I stared at her, stunned. I felt a storm of emotions: relief, rage, disappointment. Part of me wanted to lash out, to call her every name in the book, but I held myself back. Instead, I told her she made her choice and I'd be making mine. I told her she'd pushed me to the edge and I wasn't coming back. That I was done with her lies, her manipulations, her bullshit. I said I'd been patient, tried to understand, but enough was enough. That night, as she packed her bags, she kept insisting she was the victim here, that I'd ruined everything. But I knew better. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I also realized that I deserved better. I deserved honesty, respect, someone who truly cared. And as she drove away, I felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. I'd lost her, yes, but I also found a little piece of myself again, the part that refused to be played. I knew this was the end of our story, but it was also the start of a new chapter for me, one where I'd rebuild from the ashes. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever endured. The house felt emptier than ever, silent except for the ringing silence in my head. I kept replaying everything: the lies, the betrayals, her final admission, and trying to piece together how I'd let it get this far. Honestly, I was crushed, but at the same time, a strange sense of clarity started to settle in. I realized I'd been a fool to hold on hope for so long, to keep trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. I spent a lot of time alone, reflecting on what it all meant. The worst part wasn't just losing her, it was losing the trust I once had in us. I'd given her chances, tried to believe she could change, but in the end, she chose to lie and cheat. That kind of betrayal changes a person. It leaves scars, makes you question every shared moment, every promise. Still, I didn't want to become bitter. I knew I had to pick myself up and move forward, even if that meant starting over from scratch. I started by focusing on myself, getting back into shape, sorting out my finances, and reconnecting with friends I'd neglected over the years. It was hard, but I knew I couldn't let her betrayal define me. I also reached out to a counselor. Not because I was weak, but because I needed help processing all these emotions. Talking through the pain, the anger, and the sadness helped clear my head. I needed to heal, not just physically but mentally. One thing I realized painfully was how naive I'd been. I'd always believed in the good in people, in second chances, in the idea that love could conquer all. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes people just don't care enough to be honest, and you have to accept that truth, even if it hurts. I learned that I was better off without someone who could so easily betray me, someone I'd trusted with everything. But let me tell you, there was also a strange sense of liberation. Once I accepted what had happened, I stopped obsessing over her. I stopped checking her social media, stopped second-guessing every word she said. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life. I started picking up old hobbies, reconnecting with old friends, and even going to therapy. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to do it to reclaim my happiness, my dignity. The hardest part was dealing with the aftermath of her leaving. The house was empty, and everything around me reminded me of her. Her clothes, her perfume, even the damn coffee mug she always used. It was like a war zone inside my own mind. But slowly, I started turning those reminders into lessons. I promised myself I wouldn't let her ruin me or dictate my future, that I'd learn from this mess and become stronger. Some days were worse than others. I'd wake up feeling numb or angry or just completely lost. But I kept telling myself that I deserved better, that I was worthy of someone who wouldn't betray me, who wouldn't lie to my face or disrespect everything I stood for. The truth is, I'm still healing. I probably will be for a long time, but I'm also starting to see the light again. I'm discovering parts of myself I'd forgot, strength, resilience, the ability to love again, but this time more carefully. And I'll be honest, every time I think I've moved past it, something new happens that drags me back to that dark place. A memory, a song, a birthday, even just a quiet moment alone makes me wonder if I'll ever fully trust anyone again. But then I remind myself, trust is earned and I won't be reckless with it again. I'll be cautious, smarter, and more aware of the red flags next time. One thing I know for sure, this experience has changed me. I don't see love the same way anymore. I no longer believe in fairy tales where people stay faithful forever just because they say they will. What I do believe is that I'm capable of healing, of moving on, and finding happiness again. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about reclaiming my life and making sure I never allow myself to be so blind again. So yeah, I guess what I learned most of all is that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are. And I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that even after being humiliated and broken, I can pick up the pieces and build something new, something better. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll be okay. And one day, I'll look back at this chapter and realize it was just a painful but necessary part of my growth. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've changed, not just in my circumstances, but in myself. I used to believe that love was enough to keep a relationship alive, that trust was something you just gave freely and it would never break. But betrayal like this shatters all those illusions. I learned the hard way that love isn't enough if the foundation isn't built on honesty and respect. Without those, everything crumbles, no matter how deep your feelings run. The biggest lesson I've taken from all this is that I can't control other people's choices, but I can control how I respond to them. I could have gone down a darker path, lashing out, seeking revenge, burning bridges. Instead, I chose to learn, to heal, and to rebuild myself. That's what truly matters now. I've come to understand that sometimes, the best revenge is simply walking away with dignity, knowing you didn't let someone else's betrayal turn you into someone you're not. I also realized that I was lucky. Lucky I caught her when I did. Lucky I had enough strength to face the truth. And lucky I have friends and family who supported me through all the chaos. I learned to lean on those who genuinely care, rather than drown in my pain. And honestly, that's what kept me going. It's funny how sometimes the worst experiences teach us the most about who we really are and what we're capable of. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, maybe caught her sneaking around sooner, but I also accept that some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Now I trust myself more. I trust that I'll be okay, even if it hurts like hell right now. I've realized that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others, and that's perfectly normal. What matters is that I'm moving forward, not stuck in the past. So for anyone going through something similar, just know you aren't alone. Betrayal cuts deep, and it's okay to feel broken for a while. But don't let that feeling define you. You're stronger than your pain. Take your time to grieve, to process, and then pick yourself up again. Because life keeps moving, and so should you. Trust in your own strength, in your ability to rebalance your life and find happiness, even if right now it feels impossible. This whole experience has been humbling but ultimately eye-opening. It's shown me the importance of self-respect, of setting boundaries, of never settling for less than I deserve. I've learned that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Not out of weakness, but out of recognition that you deserve something better. And I believe with time I will find that better. I will find someone who values me for who I am, someone who won't ever take me for granted. And so I close this chapter with a sense of peace I hadn't thought possible after all the chaos. I've survived, I've learned, and I've grown. The pain will fade, and what's left will be a stronger, wiser version of myself. That's the real victory, knowing I didn't let betrayal destroy me, but instead made me better. Life has a way of showing us our true strength when we least expect it. I'm finally starting to see that now.